No one cares.
Next time you're at a cocktail party, a holiday cocktail party, mention Bond Fig Wall,
Yeah.
thermal break, and R value.
And watch people walk away from me.
See how it goes.
Listen, that would fly at the kind of cocktail parties I go to. Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast. It's our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. I'm your host, Justin Fink, and I'm joined by editorial director Rob Yagid and design editor Brian Pontolilo.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The holidays are upon us, ladies and gentlemen, so do not forget to grab a gift subscription to Fine Home Building. You can visit finehomebuilding.com. You can also check out everything we're doing relating to the podcast, finehomebuilding.com/podcast, and send us your questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com.
I liked how you did that.
What's that?
We brought the holidays in, and
Yeah, they're upon us.
They're upon us.
Feel all cheery.
Yeah, made
Yeah.
us feel cheery, and then you plugged the magazine.
We got to run through. We got one big central question to run through today. But if there's time at the end, we might do some caroling. We'll see how it goes. Jeff, start warming up now. So we had a question come in, and it was it's been a while since we did kind of like a large topic show. We did like what would your house look like? What would your budget build look like? So we got somebody who sent us a note and said they wanted to kind of revisit that topic, like what priorities we put on a sample remodel. So it says, "Good afternoon, Justin, Rob, and Brian. I have an idea for a future episode. Since so many older homes are in need of renovating, and the Keep Craft Alive concept is so important to those who care about their homes, the professionals they hire, etc., what would the fine home building approach be to complete renovation? Take, for example, an existing home built in the 70s or 80s that is original and needs updating. 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2,200 square foot colonial with attached garage, unfinished attic, and unfinished basement. Let's say it has the usual builder grade finishes, 3-tab shingles on the roof, painted clappers in the exterior, and a standard ducted HVAC system. The plan is for long-term ownership, not a quick flip. What would your priorities be, and how would you proceed?" He threw out a budget number of $150,000, but it's my belief that we can choose to dive into and out of this question as necessary, just to have kind of an interesting whole house remodel discussion. So, sounds like we're dealing with a pretty standard colonial here. Builder grade finishes. Yeah, I did ask him. I said, it sounded like in his original example, like he was really. What was that noise, Jeff? Did you hear that?
I did hear it. I think there's a ghost in this room.
All right.
But continue.
There's a ghost in here. So I asked him if he could send us some photos. He's a home inspector, so he just kind of chose a home.
Okay, all right.
And said, just kind of pretend it's this one.
I thought this was all like hypothetical.
Well, I think it is.
But really we were just mapping out what he should be doing on his house.
Maybe. It might be that. It might be that.
Which is fine too.
I can start by saying that what you're probably not going to get here is the fine home building approach to a whole house renovation. You're probably going to get 3 kind of opinions about what to do that are our own and not the fine home building.
Is that a disclaimer? Are you nervous what Brian and I are going to say?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
You should be. Can you hear me?
Unfortunately.
Jeff, give me some.
So let's just dive right in. It's a pretty typical situation. It doesn't sound like anything is seriously broken or wrong that we're trying to solve. It just sort of sounds like an updating remodel. So where do we start?
Well, it's funny. I mean, he rightly so, he clarified that the fact that this wasn't a quick flip, that this was for long-term living.
Yeah.
But it brings up what we hear time and time again. No matter when people think that they're going to sell their house, they make these decisions based upon resale. So even if they're going to be living in the house for 15 years, you always hear like the justification for any kind of upgrade or improvement is around resale. So when they, sell that house 30 years later, well, at least they've got the granite countertops in the kitchen.
Right.
And so
whether they hate that or
whether
not.
they hate that or not, it's like that is such an influential factor into the decisions that they make. And I get that. But I think we've talked about it before. Is I'm kind of the mind. I mean, as I'm updating my house, I don't know how long I'm going to be there, but I'm not really thinking about resale so much.
Well, I think it's also, yeah, I think understanding what that actually even means is important, right? So as no matter what we hear about, like return on investment of remodeling projects, when you really try to pin someone down for an answer, what I've done a lot of this over the years, trying to really find out is there any return on investment,
like the best bang for the buck, like that kind of stuff.
What it ends up boiling down to each time is that, and I maybe someone will disagree with me on this and write in and make a case or that we can use as feedback on the podcast. But what it ends up boiling down to over and over and over again is that there is no return on investment. If anything, these improvements that are good for resale value simply do that, help you sell your house, maybe a little quicker. Maybe it becomes the one that someone prefers over the other one because it had the granite countertops and the other one had laminate, and so they chose yours instead of theirs. But to think that you're going to get your $5,000 for your granite countertops is a myth.
Right.
To think that you're going to get the only thing I've ever heard, I said this before the show to you guys, but the only thing I've ever heard that sometimes actually raises the value of the house is a deck. It's the only thing I've ever heard.
I've heard that, and maybe a front door.
And I did recently hear photovoltaic panels.
Really?
Yes, but that's.
So is this
I've
like
never heard a dollar amount actually applied to anything else that in terms of getting your money back.
And
that
is
you
this
put in.
Is this NAHB kind of industry surveys that you've kind of pegged in the past?
No, it's mostly. I think the deck thing might be. It might be because that's something that I've heard over and over again for a long time. I just heard I was working with a solar installer on a story on that, and I asked him that question. What they're finding is that people are actually getting their money back, the actual cash outlay. So he said, if someone puts in I'm just use simple numbers. If someone puts in a $20,000 system and after tax rebates and all that stuff, their cash outlay was $10,000, they are getting that. They're getting that back when they go to sell their house.
They're selling their house for
that much more than it would have been worth. Yeah. But your house with granite countertops and your house with laminate countertops, if two houses, all else equal, are going to be appraised exactly the same. And that's all that a mortgage company cares about is that appraisal.
I hate the appraisal process.
Me too.
I hate the fact that it's not about your house, really. I mean, it is about your house, but like the comp thing, you know what I mean?
Well, it's about statistics. They can look at it on paper and give you the value. They don't even have to come.
And it's irrelevant of like really the quality and, I mean, he brings about Keep Craft Alive. It's like, how many bedrooms? Like, what's the square footage?
Yeah.
Well, what's the region you're in or
Location.
the town? Location.
Property size, square footage.
Number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms.
Yeah.
And then some general categories. How does that, compare to the other house that has been sold that meets similar
within
criteria?
a certain range, yeah.
And we'll slap a number on it. It's like, come on, man.
And yours could be a high-performance home, and those could be.
I spent thousands of dollars busting my ass to make this thing way better than those homes, and it's irrelevant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not great.
Yep.
What would you do different?
I would change the industry.
That's what Rob would do. He'd
Well,
change the
no,
industry.
I know that they've tried to scratch at that with these certification programs, not only on the national level, like Energy Star and all that kind of stuff, but I know like Portland has a really big one. I know there's some in Texas. We should dig this up and put them on the show notes because I think Sean Groom did an exhaustive kind of profile on these certification systems where, you could at least hang your hat on something and you could prove the fact that what you're buying into is not average. You can demonstrate the energy consumption and energy savings. You could dig deeper through these programs. So it's kind of like that window sticker on a car.
Yeah.
We don't really have that for houses in the sense of like its efficiency and things. So.
And apparently appraisers can get credentials, extra credentials like continuing education to appraise for things like energy performance and things beyond the average, what appraisers do. The problem and the reason why none of them are really doing that is because the banks who are lending the money still don't care. They still don't appreciate those aspects of the house.
And I mean,
and won't lend money for them.
Well, they'll start caring, I think, like when customers start caring, right? I mean, like, it's not a thing because people aren't asking for, like, so what's the R value or what are the energy costs associated with this house that I'm about to buy?
But who are they going to ask that to? I mean, like, who is...
The homeowner who's lived there for 5 years and can demonstrate what their energy costs have
but
been.
you say they're not asking for it. Who...
People who care about that sort of thing.
Right. But what does it look like when they start caring? Did they ask a real estate agent, help me track down a house where the R value is at least this?
Or no, I mean, like, okay, so you look at a real estate listing and you see that it has, 5 bedrooms, 2 baths, whatever it might be, and its annual operating cost from this segment is this. And so it starts to become tallied into the house that you're buying.
Yeah.
It starts to become part of the conversation until people stop. I mean, no one's asking for that.
Yeah, we could do some sort of Dateline style investigative report at Fine Homebuilding where we go into a realtor, when they ask what we're looking for in a house, we're looking for an R20 basement, and we're looking for our 44 walls,
and
our
just have them look at
77 roof. We'd like photovoltaic panels. We like windows with a U value of at least 0.8.
Yeah.
And just
I want an HRV, not an ERV.
Yeah. Watch them squirm in their seat and tell us that they're not taking on any new customers right now.
Well, it's kind of one of those things like, sometimes I laugh when you walk into houses with some people, and whether it's a house tour or whatever, or you talk about people, or you're communicating with people who are in the process of purchasing. There's like those quintessential phrases. I don't know. I'm getting off on a tangent here, but whatever. It's like they walk into a house, old house, look around. This place has good bones.
I love the good bones.
The good bones.
I hate the good bones. Because I look around, I was like, this house is crap, man.
Yeah. What does good bones mean?
What does good bones mean? Like, what are you
framing?
looking at? Because there's a framing member like in front of your face, and it looks like it's not split out and rotted. I just think the bar is pretty low.
Yeah.
And I think when customers and consumers start raising the bar based upon the questions they're asking and the values they're putting into the properties, then the industry will adapt and shift. Mm-hmm. Lenders and real estate, and realtors will all start to consider what is important to consumers. And currently, it's stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, and as much square footage you could possibly fit onto a lot.
And you know who's getting educated?
I mean,
it's
not everybody, but that's a lot of kind of commodity housing, if you want to call it. Yeah.
The few homeowners that are getting educated are the ones that are going through the process of building a house with a good architect and/or builder. Mm-hmm. Whenever I meet homeowners that have been through that, I'm blown away by how much they know and how much they understand. And so the more people that do that, go through that process, I guess, that the more people will know what questions to ask and what to look for and start to value things that you don't see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, totally. I had that when I was doing the Bonfig approach in the attic. And I was like...
The Bonfig is up in the attic.
I was like, no one's going to see this. No one cares.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm going to get some extra R value and some thermal break and but like the time, and it's not like a lot of time and it's not a lot of expense, and it solves some things for me because I'm trying to be as energy conscious as I can given what I'm working with. But at the end of the day, it's like no one cares.
Next time you're at a cocktail party, a holiday cocktail party, mention Bonfig wall, thermal break, and R value,
and watch people walk away from me.
See how it goes.
Listen, that would fly at the kind of cocktail parties I go to.
No, they're gonna look at they're gonna look at me. They're gonna look at me and say, "But you want the house to breathe, right?"
Yeah. Well, all right. So back on track here.
Back on track.
So what's the low hanging fruit? I mean, we got this house. Do we try to make it energy efficient? Do we try to update the finishes? Do we try to? If we go with the $150,000 number, that goes pretty far. If you're doing work yourself, it goes really far,
and it goes nowhere.
It goes nowhere
if you're gonna have a blowout kitchen with like a designer involved in
or if you put an addition on the
contractor.
Back.
We're assuming that everything is buttoned up though. Like we don't have to do any kind of assessment. Like make sure this thing is like operating the way that it ought to be.
Okay,
operating.
I'm going to try to spin this slightly different because it seems like maybe this will help us. Let's say that you're buying this house and you want to do some remodeling. Where would you put the money towards? Like, what would be your priorities walking into this house? What would you be looking at and assessing and considering upgrading?
Kitchen.
Wow, Brian just wants to cook.
And adjacent living space. master suite,
Why is that two number? You got
Outdoors-
that's two fingers
What are
on
we
the
doing?
list.
outdoor space.
Where does this list come from? You're not clarifying.
You just asked what we would do.
I know, but you can explain.
This is what I would do. This is where I'd put my focus.
Why the kitchen first?
Yeah, why the kitchen first?
It wasn't in any order. These are just sort of the high priority spaces.
Justin asked, what would you do first?
But why?
Where would you? Well, that's what's hard to answer in this hypothetical because it depends on the house.
I would
You
get
had
in
an
there
answer pretty
All right,
firmly.
So I would get in there, and I would be sure that the house is operating as it should. And so, like, I would be mindful of that this is as healthy of a house as it could be. That there's nothing wrong.
What does that mean? What are you looking for?
Energy audit.
Not actually an energy audit, but making sure that for instance, that I guess you get that in the inspection to a degree, but to be sure that I don't have super leaky ductwork and
You won't get that in the
return
inspection.
air supplies that are drawing air from a nasty crawl space and
Do you know
pumping
that
it throughout
about your
my
house now? You've been living in your house for years. Do you know that?
Yeah, I've got things that need
Because
work.
I certainly didn't do that.
Yeah, like radon tests, like make sure that like the levels are cool and make sure that there's not like bulk water issues occurring, and that I don't have ductwork, I don't have a furnace, I've got a boiler to make sure like that
Didn't I
is.
get hammered last week for saying bulk water?
Probably.
No, you said you get hammered for saying wet water.
I did get both. I think both.
Yeah.
Okay.
You definitely got hammered for saying wet
Okay.
water.
Get back on track.
Rightly so.
Bulk water.
So and I think as you start to scratch at some of those issues, then you do get into like the repair realm and a little bit of weatherization. Like if you've got windows, and I guess again you'll notice that if you've got rotten windowsills or rotten casing, like, all right, well, my windows are leaking and they're rotting out. Should probably address it before I splurge on like
right. So this is.
on the fun stuff like a master bathroom remodel. That's
I guess I didn't see that so much as remodeling projects, as in you have to do those things if you have those conditions. Like that's not like I don't decide I'm going to remodel my house. And then all of a sudden I realize, oh yeah, I have a wet basement, my windows leak, I need a new roof. Like you would do those things because you need to do that.
That could chew up. Yes, but that could chew up a lot of that. If you have 150K and you've got a lot of, mechanical issues or ventilation issues or weatherization issues, it'll dig into that, and that
right,
could be.
That's not what I'm saying. I thought
you want to do the fun stuff.
No, I thought that according to based on this question, I assumed that like repair and maintenance was done. I didn't think I thought he was talking about a remodel to upgrade the house.
Yeah, it's mostly
Okay.
it's mostly a outdated.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm being too practical, or I'm being too basics. Fundamentally, we've got a rock solid house. It's dry. There's no rot really happening.
No, you're not. I'm
Justin, recast the question.
It's both. I'm trying to. You guys didn't seem to do too well with the concept of like.
We were right on track.
What would we
Good job, Brian.
do for aesthetic decisions? But like, what are the things that you're looking for when you go into a house? Like, what are you assessing? Like, where does it start? Are you what are you going? Well, first things first. Like, this is my top priority. If the insulation is not super insulated, I'm going to direct all my attention and resources to making sure that happens. Whereas I would not do that.
No.
Is your attention more on aesthetics? Like, hey, the house has lasted this long since the 70s or 80s. I'm sure I'm going to give it a year with my heating and cooling and see where we end up with my heating and cooling bills. And in the meantime, I'm going to focus on making this kitchen kick ass. Like, for me, I feel like the things that I'm most grossed out about in 70s and 80s or like turned off by are the bathrooms and the kitchens.
Yeah.
Like, the bathrooms are always with the Formica and like the plastic tubs. I feel like you can make a really big impact to your day-to-day life by doing that. And if you have, in this example, it was 2.5 baths, that seems like a remodeling project that you could make feasible without totally interrupting your life, as opposed to a kitchen remodel where, that's going to be a major disruption. I also am always curious about carpets over hardwood floors.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But there's also a part of me that really freaking misses wall-to-wall carpets from when I was a kid.
That's typically older houses, though, than 80s houses.
Right. Yeah, you're not gonna have like that beautiful
upstairs.
hardwood
But
floor.
that's usually just carpet.
Yeah,
not a hardwood floor.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and a lot of people don't know that. People see
Right.
carpet and they go, well, I'm going to rip these up. We're going to have hardwood underneath. It's
Right.
like, no, you're probably not.
No, you're not. If your
Yeah.
house is built in the 80s and the second floor is wall to wall.
I kind of miss wall-to-wall carpeting.
I think it's dynamite.
We talked about it. I'm definitely considering it for like the bedrooms upstairs.
It went away with all the allergen talks and,
Yeah.
and like the
But it's
hardwood was king.
kind of comfortable.
If you got a
You just wanna lay down.
If you got a standard 2-floor house, and if you hit the stairs and step onto carpet,
Oh, yeah.
you're psyched.
Yeah. It's hard to make a nice looking carpeted stair though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so I don't know. I would be tempted to, but the thing is, even if it's an old house, I mean, I would, or like a 70s, 80s house that has carpet, I might consider yanking that and recarpeting it. Though, I mean, that can be a pretty inexpensive way to refresh the interior
And
of a
quick,
house.
they do it. Carpet installers, they just come in and
Yeah.
I feel
Bust it
like
out.
so as I think about it, it's like that's kind of like what I look for is like these big surfaces, right?
Yeah,
So
walls.
it's like the walls. Of course, they're all getting washed and painted.
Washed.
Washed. Yeah, the little TSB going on. Trisodium phosphate. Anybody? Especially if you bought it from a smoker.
Yeah, I don't.
I bought that
I gotta
condo.
tell you, I know you're supposed to wash walls. I never do it.
Dude, wash the walls.
I'm all tangled up over here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cord. What? So.
It doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
Dust and grime
So-
and grease and dirt and all that stuff.
You just dipping a sponge into a bucket and you're just wiping it down, or are you like doing a
Yeah.
couple passes? What's the method here?
No, I'm like, using a sponge and
Yeah.
wiping it down. And that condo that I bought way back when, I bought it from a smoker. And
Yeah.
holy smokes, like the entire place turned a different color.
Holy smokes.
Holy smokes. So you guys like that? Yeah, definitely worth washing.
Yeah.
So it's like, the walls, the floors. I don't know if I would then start attacking, trim, but
But this is the
painted
thing.
trim.
This is the thing you get into is you start, and every remodeler knows this. It's the project creep thing. You start to
Yeah.
peel up that corner of the carpet. You get a little carried away, and suddenly the whole room is gutted.
Yeah.
Or like the trim. You need to patch some trim over here, and you say, well, as long as I'm going to patch it, maybe I'll sand off the paint and get it back to the natural pine that's there, and I'll stain it, make it look nice. And like, well, now I got one room that's pine, and everything else is painted, so I'm going to rip all the trim out and do that. Like, you can easily, at least I can, easily
think that's-
start a million different things.
I think that's you.
Well, but you'd have to make a decision. Like, if you say, I'm going to replace the trim in my house, are you going to rip out all your trim and then replace all your trim, or are you going to rip out all your trim in your living room and replace it and have your living room finished? And then you're going to rip out all your trim in your bathroom and replace it and finish it and move it. That's a big decision of, am I going to, because you can get into the mode of, I'm running baseboard, and you can be really productive and knock out a whole house, as opposed to, I'm just going to focus on finishing my living room right now, or I'm going to, by the time I get to the next room, I've forgotten all the things I just learned about running baseboard, and I have to relearn them and make all the same mistakes again. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's not a nonsense decision. I mean, it does take some thought. Especially like let's say you want to paint all your trim. It's sure nice to paint it all at once outside, and then have it all painted, and then you install it, and all you have to do is touch up.
That's right.
So there's pluses and minuses to figuring out, are you going to try and do the whole house at once or a little chunk at a time? Mm-hmm. And a little chunk at a time can often feel like you're just never freaking done.
I think again. I mean, if you're keeping the house the way it is for the most part, and you're just upgrading trim, great. That's an excellent project to do something quick. Upgrade, painting the walls, excellent project to just bust something out that changes, freshens up. Colors that you like. Changing flooring, depending on the complexity of that work, could be in the same category, or might not, or it might be changing flooring can also be very complex, depending on the conditions. I like the idea of picking a project, and that's why I went with the three things that I went with: the kitchen, living area, master suite, and outdoor space. I like the idea of picking a project that is going to impact the way you live in the house and really enhance the way you live in the house, and maybe then from there letting that drive some other. It's more of the simple things. So, for example, if you start in the kitchen, and you're like, okay, I'm going to make this kitchen. I'm going to get we're in the kitchen a lot. We're in this living area that adjacent to the kitchen a lot. We're going to get this just how we want it.
Yep.
With cabinetry, islands, peninsulas, built-ins, all those types of things that you might have in those spaces, and then let that lead the way into other spaces. Okay, did we change the trim in a way that we should now carry that into these other rooms? Because just updating the trim in those other rooms now becomes simple. it's just updating the trim in those rooms. Maybe they're staying largely the same, But those lifestyle impacting spaces are a key place to focus on in a way to organize and prioritize your remodel and what you might do on your house.
I totally agree with that. And that's going to be more impactful to your experience of your home than low energy bills.
Yes.
Right. And I think
and you can do a lot of that along the way.
Sure.
If you're gutting
room
walls,
by room, if you're going to do it. But yeah, if your house isn't like functional or comfortable or like on some level like an inspiring place to be and hang out and live, then you're just not going to be. What are we doing?
What are we doing here? Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be a surprise to a lot of people who listen to this show, though, because we talk so much about you need to get your house tight and you need to get it well insulated, and pretty much all of us are saying, yeah, don't worry about that when you're remodeling.
Well,
you should worry about making the space.
Not necessarily. I mean, if your house is, because I think that's what when Rob first started talking about things, and I said, like, I'm assuming those are done. I think, like, if you really had an energy pig, if you really had, leaky ducts or, single pane windows that were drafty, I mean, to me, that's obvious. Yeah, you got to address those things.
Because that comes down to the function of the house. Like, if you're, super drafty, uncomfortable and cold and, like, fighting to keep this thing, like, at a reasonable temperature, that's going to make you just as miserable as a kitchen that doesn't operate as well as it should.
Yeah. If your energy bills make it, you can't afford to ever remodel, it's a problem and that you'll have to address first. And I mentioned in there somewhere, I mentioned built-ins. And I think I'm a big fan of I remember when I was a kid, the house that we grew up in, my parents had it was exactly this house described here. And just in a few rooms, they had a cabinet maker come design and install some built-ins. And what an impact. And we've seen plenty of houses here. We just published a bungalow recently that was remodeled, and then just some of the built-ins that they did as part of that remodel they're so functional, and they had so much character. Built-ins.
It's also an opportunity to get style appropriate furnishings into your house, especially in bedrooms and, like where like, you're going to bring a dresser and it doesn't really match that craftsman style or whatever it is, It's cool to get that functionality and have it built in and feel as part of the home. And it's cool, we've mentioned it too, on somewhat smaller homes, it's an opportunity to get all that function and then just you don't have to have as much furniture.
Yes.
And it just makes it feel uncluttered and, just better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's a very marked difference between having furniture and having built-ins. It's almost like, at the risk of being obvious, it's the permanence of the built-ins that makes it feel like the room is different. I don't know what it is. You could have something that does the same function, but if it's built in, it just feels different.
They give the house character.
Yeah.
The furniture might have character, but the built-ins give the house character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those stylings, the furnishings could be independent of that of the house, so they'll never feel right. We've had the unfortunate opportunity to like walk into newly designed or newly constructed homes with an architect after the homeowners have moved in with their furniture, and like the look on their face is like, oh my God, they just ruined this house. Because nothing really made sense. And it was everything that they had. Of course, they went through the expense of building this home. They're not going to go through all the expensive. Few people have the expense of then having custom furniture designed for these spaces. And it's just like,
never mind custom furniture, just getting new furniture that works for the new house.
Right.
That's what we all do. We drag our stuff from the last house and we try and make it work with a new one.
And often it doesn't.
And then it's like, well, I don't want to get rid of this nice table, so I'm going to force it into position over here. Or for me, it's like, I want to build this thing. Where am I going to put it in the house?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and there are some styles that, I'm thinking mostly of shaker stuff, but there's some styles that really can kind of work in really well in like these, 80s colonials, and without like stylizing in a way that isn't right, but also still having a whole lot of character and just, make a space really sweet.
Yeah.
And Rob, we were talking off the air about air quality recently. Like for something like this, a lot of people ask the question of like, well, how tight is too tight? And, we were joking around about, like, shouldn't houses breathe? So do you have thoughts on, or you seem to have some thoughts on when to worry about air quality?
I I will punt a little bit that people should check out our show notes page because I'll have Mike put up 2 links around air quality. One was an article written by Jamie Lyons for Fine Homebuilding, and the other is an article that Martin Holliday wrote for Green Building Advisor, which is super technical around really ventilation rates. But the I guess for a super high level view is that you always want to be mindful of air quality. And tight houses or leaky houses, people have always associated, healthy houses with houses that breathe and that ventilate themselves. What they're not always understanding is that it could introduce more contaminants into the house than should be. But at the end of the spectrum, tight houses that don't exhaust and don't circulate that air could also have problems. And so I think I'll attribute this to Jamie because I did scan through that article. It comes down to 3 kind of primary issues. One, poor construction or construction quality. And so that gets into air tightness, like flashing details, for instance. Okay, now we're getting bulk water and we're getting very, very wet water, Brian, into the structure. That could be, so that's an example of poor construction practice that needs to be remedied or considered. The other category is mechanicals that operate correctly. And so furnaces, boilers, and things like that operating as they were designed. And when you have ductwork, I think it is even more critical because those are actually distribution mechanisms throughout the house. And so if you're drawing, let's say you've got, for whatever reason, some faulty construction, you've got a return air duct going through an unconditioned basement or crawl space, and that duct is on negative pressure and it's leaky, and you also have a family of skunks living under there. And mice, and you've got maybe some mold going on. And so that...
Or just a bunch of cans of varnish.
Or a bunch of cans of varnish. I don't know if you would have that in your crawl space, but maybe.
Oh, crawl space. I thought you were saying basement, sorry.
Or basement.
That wasn't a part of the show.
So that'll be sucking that air and redistributing it through your house. So that's not great. And then the other is a big main category that you just want to be mindful of is just like human activity. And that gets into like your hobbies, whether you're like a woodworker and you're finishing furniture down in the basement, you've got these toxic fumes. Or if you've got, I don't know if it was in this instance, you work on your car a lot in the garage, and it's really and it's connected to the house right off that kitchen door. Well,
this one did say it was an under garage, so this was
that's always a little bit.
And I will say
couple issues there.
That's a big flag. Yeah, like that's going to hit a bunch of levels in terms of remodel. One, it can lead to a lot of air quality problems because it's
some nasty stuff.
It's surrounded by your house. Like your garage with all your nasty stuff is surrounded by house where you're breathing.
Start that car in the winter and let the fumes build up and go through all the little cracks and stuff in the drywall and permeate up through that fiberglass insulation into your bedroom as you're waking up. Yeah,
it's not even permeate. It's like be sucked in.
Yeah,
through all those
pressure differentials and stuff like that. Yep.
It's also it always seems that the master bedroom's right over that, and it's always the floor is always cold, and you always have you get up in the morning, go to work, your wife complains about the garage door opener rattling the floor. That's often a pretty problematic solution.
Can that be done? Okay, can that be done well?
So there's a couple. So there's two. Yeah, there's 2 ways. I mean, so when they talk about how to address indoor air quality, it's like make sure everything is like. Make sure your house is built and things are flash so you're not getting water intrusion and but when it comes to ventilation is important obviously, and there's spot ventilation and whole house ventilation. And so in the context of a garage, which we've done on the Pro Home in Rhode Island, I think Tamarack makes it. They make a unit for the garage.
So you're just venting the garage in and out.
And I think it's motion activated or something like that. So as you go into the garage or if you hit the garage door or it'll kick on and it will ventilate that space.
It's the same. We talked about this for crawl spaces too. It's like just keeping those potentially dangerous areas slightly negative pressure. So like just even a very low CFM fan blowing out from that space will always ensure that if there is leakage, it's leaking into that from your house into the garage.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a safe way to tackle it. And those low CFM fans draw like no power.
Yeah,
it's an easy.
Yeah,
easy way to tackle it. But I've seen we did the first Pro Home had an attached garage, and the passive house that we covered in the magazine in several parts, Steve Basic series, that was an attached garage, and that was a passive house. So I mean, it's people like that that feature, and so it's
Yeah.
on the architects and builders to figure out how to do it safely.
Yeah. And I think, we'll put up links because as you get into the indoor air quality discussion, if you especially get into the ventilation discussion, then it's not a rabbit hole, but it's complex. You know, there's exhaust only, there's balanced ventilation, there's all these types of approaches to accomplish the same thing, which is making sure that you're breathing healthy, clean air.
Yeah.
We've done a bunch of articles on it. We could post on it.
It wasn't one of the big takeaways, like if you have a lot of condensation on your windows, like if there's high humidity kind of things going on, and that's a pretty good sign.
They say
that you have,
one of the things to address indoor air quality, or just to be mindful of it, is to address the relative humidity of the interior spaces. So, and they say roughly benchmark anything over 70%, which is pretty high, could spur mold growth.
Yep.
Anything over 50% could support dust mites and things like that. So ideally, you want to keep your relative humidity indoors below 50%.
and that could be with a dehumidifier or
Yeah, and again, there's a bunch of ways to do that: HRVs, ERVs, dehumidification,
wood stove.
wood stove, dry that thing, bone dry.
You want that wood trim to
Yeah.
be cracking in half.
Yeah. Little note as you kind of scratch into the different approaches. The exhaust only is one way where when you've got just exhaust, there's no return supply. That's a kind of a system that you want to stay away from because
Really?
yeah. Well, because where is that? Because that makeup air is coming from someplace.
Right.
And so likely that makeup air is coming from the leaky portions of your home. So it's only going to exacerbate some energy losses as you're drawing that cold air in. But it might also be drawing from areas where you don't want makeup air to be coming from.
Like your crawl space.
Like your crawl space, like your basement, like the faulty weather stripping around your door to the garage, and you're now drawing all that stuff in there. So dig into it. It's a really interesting topic.
Down the fireplace chimney.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's complex.
Yeah, it's
But sorry, and one thing that I've personally been a little bit frustrated by, because I want a really simple answer and there's just no simple answer, is how tight is too tight?
Yeah.
So as we're kind of remodeling our homes and we're being mindful of like, all right, I see a gap, I'm going to fill it with spray foam, I'm going to get some new windows, I'm going to do this and that. Have I reached a point where now I need to introduce mechanical ventilation? And I know that there's guidelines, but I think what it really demands is that you get in touch with probably an energy auditor could do it, where you have a blower door test and you just measure the air exchangers on your house, and it comes with the American Society of refrigeration, heating, and air conditioning. They've got thresholds as to what kind of makeup air that you need.
Oh,
what
ASHRAE.
kind of and so I just want to be like, 3 air changes or less, or
Right.
and you're good to go. But it's more involved than that. So I just
Right.
want it to be an easy answer, and I don't think it's cut and dry.
Can we talk about windows?
You can talk about anything you want. You're the host.
That is true. Let's talk about windows.
We'll shut you down, but you could try.
Well, I know that. So Brian's working on a story for the next issue, which will be out in early January, about restoring wood window sashes. And I know that sparked Rob's temper. Not that article, but it doesn't take much to get Rob on the topic of replacement windows and
My temper.
And
Talk
then
about your temper.
and then I in turn get mad thinking about real estate agents who constantly keep that kind of, I don't know, is it a myth? Keep that false hope in better energy efficiency going, like by telling other clients, well, first thing you want to do for resale is replace all these windows, or these old windows are leaky as hell, you need to get new ones. And it's like the amount of money that people are dropping on new windows with the belief that it's going to make their house more energy efficient is just so misinformed.
And the window,
So dangerous.
And the replacement window manufacturers straight up lie about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of. Remember, I was about to take a picture of that truck.
Yeah.
I saw this truck in either a lumberyard parking lot or a big box store parking lot, and it had I think it was touting something about like 90% energy or something like.
It was an insane number.
It was an insane number, and it was like, that's just not true.
Yeah.
It's like they're not gonna. There's like almost. I remember looking into this, and that whatever, apples to apples, comparison. It's like, what is the payback on replacement windows? And I think in terms of the energy savings at an average size house, I think it was like 250 years or something was the payback period.
Yeah. You know,
It was like, no, it's just,
I love for this to be studied, and probably someone has, but I would fathom to guess
What?
that even a relatively leaky window is losing more energy around it than through the window assembly itself.
Like between the
if there's
the
no
rough-
air sealing done,
the frame and the
yeah,
rough opening.
If there's no air sealing done,
Yeah.
Probably.
because that's a big gap. That's a half-inch gap around the window.
Bring back
around the
storm
perimeter
windows?
of the window without
Keep storm windows alive?
storm windows.
Storm windows are
dynamite
awesome.
Solution.
Starting a new hashtag. Keep storms alive.
Yeah, storm
Yeah.
windows are awesome.
Just make them get rid of those metal triple track, horrors, and put a nice storm window on there.
yeah, the guy
Inset ideally would be killer.
who wrote the story, Ben Brunick, about repairing window sash is. We're hoping to get him to write a story on making storms
Awesome.
as
Cool.
well.
Yeah.
So that as in, that together, he repaired their old single pane wood window sash from his 1920s bungalow. It made sense for him to repair these, and restore the windows and that kind of thing. And then he's going to make air sealed, or as well air sealed as he can, storm windows to put on for the winter.
And that's what I'm doing at my house
Yeah.
too. I did restore all the windows.
Yeah.
I did not yet build the storms.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it takes a little stumbling block, and then I fall off and get pulled in some other direction. And for me, it was sourcing the glass. It was like I kind of got lost in, like, I want there to be a really easy, cheap solution. Like, I can build these frames, then I can drop in some glass and buy some weather stripping, and I'm good to go. But it's like, well, I don't know. It's, for some reason, it's been like just slightly out of my comfort zone, so it's stumbling block for me.
So windows could potentially be one of his biggest investment if he went down that road to replace the windows. We're saying, like, just slow your roll a little bit and make sure that you actually need to replace windows.
That's what I'm saying.
So when would you suggest someone actually replace their windows?
I'm saying you're right. What I'm trying to clarify here is so many people treat that as a knee jerk. Well, obviously you have to start with your new windows because
Right.
this is going to be the place to start,
Mm-hmm.
and you can blow a huge amount of money on that for so little return in actual day-to-day comfort or
savings.
savings
and I-
or
and I-
return on investment.
I think that's what we need. I think what we need to get at is that don't replace your windows for energy savings.
Right.
Yes.
Until you've done everything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you should replace your windows when they're broken.
All right, so
Yeah.
let's go over
They
that.
don't
Inoperable.
operate.
Yeah.
When you open the window and it won't stay open on its own,
Yes.
which actually you can sometimes
Just
fix
for-
that depending
yeah.
on the kind of window.
Yeah, just cut a stick.
If the glass is broken,
Reglaze it. Go ahead.
well, that doesn't always.
Okay, all right, so,
it's like aluminum windows, the seals break.
So that's what we're talking about. Is like anything other than wood windows. I mean, the beauty of wood windows, which Brian is scratching at in this article, and we've got a couple other articles, is that they're like many things of old, is that they were designed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And they were fixable.
Yeah.
So like sash cords, easy fix. Reglazing windows, easy. Whatever. You could tune those things up.
Yeah.
All of
Brian's
the-
article tells you how to do
Yeah,
it.
those parts are not. All of the parting beads and the
weather
they're
stripping,
designed
all that
to be
stuff.
reversible and taken apart
Yeah.
and put
Yeah.
back together again. That's the point
Yeah.
of the wood window.
Yeah. So when you've got like aluminum framed windows
Yeah.
or vinyl windows that have blown seals, blown gaskets, and you don't have the opportunity to fix them in
It's
our
a lot
disposal
harder
economy.
to. It's a lot harder to like add a storm window to that. Like house I grew up in, we had like sliding aluminum windows. It was like a little bit of a modern style. It was like a 70s
Yeah.
cool chic modern house, and it had these crappy blown seal slider windows. And I mean, what would you do with that? You can't put a storm on that.
Right.
So
I do like a slider.
Yeah. So when they're inoperable, they're broken and irreparable.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and at that point, are we still liking the idea of replacement windows? I remember going a couple of rounds with some different customers, and I think my brother too, really having a hard time. He was having a really hard time wrapping his head around the concept that with an insert replacement window, his window was going to be smaller than the one he's replacing.
And it will be.
Like
By like what,
slightly.
like inch and a half, maybe,
Yeah,
like
but-
overall.
But it was like almost paralyzing for him. Like,
Yeah.
I got to find the one that's going to reduce it the least. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't think this is really going to matter much.
Yeah. I mean, opposed to like peeling back siding and stuff and,
Yeah.
and adding a new construction, like a flanged window.
The trouble with those replacement windows is that there's not a whole lot. You're relying on pretty much sealant. Like, I mean, for the weather, for the air sealing and the weather resistance.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not glued into place. You still have fasteners going in.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's a reason why they can go so quick. It's because that the window is sized roughly for the opening, and then you have these kind of extensions that push out and fill up the gap, and then you caulk them, and you call it a day.
Yeah.
It's probably
It's like a miracle
those-
transformation.
And I think for those people who may listen to this show and may not be tackling the work themselves and may be in the position of hiring someone, I think it's sometimes important to remind them that it's not just about the window. So like a crew could come in there and just knock those replacements out and just move on and not deal with the sill that has been rotten or the window trim that is rotten or the fact that there is no insulation between the window frame and the rough opening, and perhaps they should pop the trim and just take 30 seconds to fill that gap with spray foam to get maximum performance out of the $40,000 to $50,000 investment that they're about to make in the windows themselves.
Yeah, and please, God, don't just wrap the rotten parts outside with
Coil stock?
stock and then pretend like your house is brand new. It drives me insane to see an old house covered with that stuff. Not even an old house, just because you know, like you're in the situation with your house. You're like, well, maybe I want to do wood siding. Maybe I want to do this, and it's like
I'm so afraid.
you're so afraid because nobody puts up vinyl or aluminum siding on a house just because they like it.
I think I've mentioned on the show before, I've got a neighbor who's got this beautiful Victorian kind of farmhouse, but it's, because I saw photos of it recently, historic photos of it, and you can see all the beautiful trim elements and stuff. And now you can kind of see some of the proportion in the trim pieces that have been wrapped in coil stock. And I was talking to him one day, and he's like, yeah, I don't dare touch, he's a builder. He's like, I don't dare touch any of it because I know that these guys came through and just made way for the coil stock and the J channel, and he's like, so I know that when I pull it back, there's not going to be much left to restore.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be rebuilding it all. Yeah, it's
One other thing I wanted to mention before we wrap this thing up was I wanted to point out, don't overlook the attic and the basement as potential square footage to reclaim before you consider bumping out somewhere.
be mindful of head heights.
Yeah, head heights.
Well, so those the code element, that is right. I mean, because you get to the point, additions are very expensive.
Yeah.
Additions with like full foundations,
Yes.
excavation, all
Super
that kind of stuff,
expensive.
super expensive. So yeah, look for that easily reclaimed space in the basement or the attic. And then I think the next step would be to look for bump outs.
Yep.
Right?
20 square feet can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could create those little nooks that almost feel like intimate spaces, like that kind of day bed, built in with bookshelves. That could almost feel like a room in itself and adds a whole level of comfort and function without the complexity of adding another room.
Adds character to
Yeah.
the outside of the house, to the
Yeah.
inside of the house.
I've
adds
seen
function.
number of bump outs where they only went out far enough. They only went out the depth of the kitchen cabinetry.
Yeah.
And it made all the difference.
That's cool.
A little shed roof on the back of the
Yeah.
house, and
Looks cool,
the
too.
cabinetry's now out there. Yeah, you had character to the backyard,
Yeah. And you don't have to get into digging
Yeah.
in the dirt and pouring
Yeah.
forms and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah,
And-
it's almost a
gives
fun
you just
project.
the space you want inside.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. A couple of things to be mindful of if you are going to go. We do have an article on bump outs that offers some pretty good structural solutions for like how to cantilever and how to support them and that kind of stuff, how to make them look good on the outside. But if you go down in the basement, we also have some stuff about that. The biggest stumbling blocks there are going to be, is it dry? Does it stay dry? What is your risk level?
Yeah.
Which is a huge consideration for a basement, and a risk level of it getting wet. But also, you gotta know going in, what is your expectation for this basement room? Like, do you want to walk down there and feel like you haven't gone into a basement, or do you just want like an away space that it's okay that it's kind of a cave?
Right.
Because that will influence how much effort you put into it.
Yeah.
You can make a basement feel pretty damn livable but it might mean cutting some holes in the foundation, adding some natural light, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's obvious to say if you think about putting a bedroom in any of these areas, then you've got egress issues to address. So
yeah, the attic is also something that not a lot of people bump into. I think because it sometimes has more challenges. If you already have your insulation on the floor on your upstairs ceiling, then you'd have to figure out how to move that up to the rafters so that now your attic is added into your insulated space, or at least the portion that you're going to finish. You wouldn't do that?
Well, my floors. I'm going to have my own zone.
Well,
up there,
you're just not.
You can leave it in place and then add more insulation to the roof deck. Yeah.
Yes, I should have said that.
People are going to be pulling up like they're like, what do I do with this stuff? Throw it in the dumpster and go buy new bats.
Just pick it up.
Yeah.
Lift it up.
Yeah. It's okay if it stays in place. Just be sure that you're not,
It's good soundproofing at that point. But you do need to make sure that oftentimes those attic spaces were not framed with lumber that was intended to carry the load of a floor. So you need to know what you're working with there with span tables. And again, the egress issue. But to certain roofs, you can pop a couple of dormers on there. You got a pretty light-filled. Maybe it's just one upstairs bedroom.
Shed dormers are great.
It's like for that 16-year-old that you can't stand anymore. And you want them to move upstairs and put a stairway off. They can go outside directly.
I mean, finishing an attic without even putting up partitions and making rooms, but just having some flooring, having some drywall on the ceilings, and a dormer for some light, and now it's a playroom when your kids are young. It's a bedroom when they're teenagers. It's an office when they move out, and it's something else for the next homeowners when they move in. And it's just all you've done is basically conditioned the space.
Yeah, walk-up attics.
Made it look kind of nice.
You've increased square footage, which will help you on resale, Brian.
Resale.
Does anybody,
Full circle.
Does anybody still do walk-up
investment.
attics, or does everybody just switch over to hatches at this point? I had a hatch growing up, but yours is a walk-up, sort of.
Kind of.
I had a walk-up in my little house. Remember?
My folks
I
have a
took it out.
walk-up.
Now you got to go outside to get in the attic.
You had a lot of space up in that attic you could have used.
There's no head height.
Really?
Not
I
even
can't
at the
remember.
ridge. You couldn't stand.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so many
I
years
could
ago.
almost stand. You definitely couldn't.
All right. That'll be good for this week. We'll catch you guys all next week. Remember to send us questions, fhppodcast@taunton.com. We're getting into the winter months, so I'm sure that we're going to have to deal with some insulation and air sealing and ice dam stuff. But also, now's a good time to start planning those summer projects, spring and summer, maybe some decks, maybe some outdoor projects. We like to talk about decks, too. Hit us up. You can go to findhomebuilding.com/podcast as well to check out all of the things that we mentioned on this show, see links to that stuff, and watch a video version of this show. All right, that's going to wrap it. We'll see you guys next week. Until then, this is Justin for Brian and Rob saying, keep craft alive and happy building.